A very, very warm welcome to everyone who's online today. This is an amazing, amazing festival of construction. And in these times, it's more important than ever before that we make sure that we are being as sustainable as we can in construction because of the level of both commercial but social impact that construction can create. In my short time with you today, what I'm going to do is do this in two halves. I'm going to talk a little bit about the financial perspective around construction and what investors are looking for new ideas for the future. I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual mindset of an investor. You know, what are they looking for? What's the language? What's the story that you need to be telling? But also, what's the impact that you want to create? And then once I've done that, I'm going to switch into a much more personal view on your mindset as a young person with ideas, with the ability and a passion to be able to work for employers who want to make a difference. Because I think it's also important to recognize that as young leaders, you have the ability to affect change. You are the employees, you are the leaders, you are the innovators of tomorrow. And what I want to do is to make sure that I can give you back some insight from my own experiences and the experiences of many people that I've had the privilege to learn from in order to help you to think about yourself in that way too. So let's get started. So in terms of what investors are looking for, well, let's have a look at where the situation is in terms of the state of finance. I think what we're in now is what I call a responsible state of finance. By that, what I mean is that we're in a world now where finance is much more around the impact it's going to create rather than just the commercial value that's going to be realized. So what investors are looking for are ideas, businesses, opportunities that can add long-term sustainable value whilst also being commercially viable. So one of the areas that investors are increasingly looking at is this idea of social value, ideas in terms of the community impact and how you are evidencing that. So for example, if you're a young person and you are doing some volunteering in your local community, whether it be a local project or a local charity, or for your school, your college, your university, whatever that may be, if you're giving your time to add value to something else or to somebody else, that time has a value. So if you're doing 2 hours of mentoring or 2 hours of volunteering, if you was to think about how much someone would charge or how much you would charge for that time, that's the social value that you've created. So say you're being charged £10 an hour and you do 2 hours, that's £20 an hour. If you times that by 200 hours, 2,000 hours, 20,000 hours, you can start to see how that commercial value racks up. So when you're going to an investor and you're talking about sustainable finance, or you're talking about getting finance where you can be much more inclusive, it's that type of conversation that investors are interested in. You know, what's the commercial value in terms of your cash flow and your numbers, but also what else are you doing that could be evidenced as social value, because that itself can be commercialized and that itself could be the difference between you and somebody else who's going for that same finance. And when I say finance, I'm talking lending, I'm talking investing, I'm talking micro loans, anything where someone is giving you funds enabled to help you develop an idea, a project, anything that's worth investing into. Social value is a part of that. One of the other things that lenders, financial investors are looking for is the story. It's what's the story of your business? What's the story of your project? What's the journey of your experience? You know, where did you start from? Where are you now? And where do you want to be in the future? So telling that story is really important because increasingly finance providers want to know who you are and they want to know your journey. They can look at spreadsheets all day in terms of business, but what they want to know about is the journey, the passion, the purpose, the real reason why you're engaged in what you're doing, because it's the story that they buy into. And if the story makes sense and it's a story that they're attracted to, then the commercial side and the number side is something that they can work with you with to develop. So don't be afraid, even as a young person, to communicate your story. In fact, make sure you do, because it's your story and that sustainable journey that you're on. That's what's going to be most attractive. And then finally, it's about the impact you're creating. What is it that you want to achieve for the long term? When we're talking about construction, we're talking about built environments, we're talking about social change. What does that look like? Can you truly articulate your future today? These are the types of things that financial lenders and those who want to invest in your ideas want to see. They want to know, what does this look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Because actually, whether you get that there or not is actually not as important as having clarity about where you want to get to, because that's when people know what resources they could give you, what support you might need, when you might need it, how you might need it, etc., etc. So those are my 3 things that I wanted to share in terms of sustainable finance. It's understanding the value that you're creating, social value, commercial value, or otherwise. It's about the story of how you want to move forward with that value from where it started to where you are, to where you want to be. But it's also about the impact you want to create for the long term, that end goal, that long-term vision, that clarity of what success looks like. Those are the 3 things that investors, lenders, anyone who wants to invest into your idea, your business, your future, that's what they want to know. So that's kind of the more formal aspect of the financing space and the business support space. What I want to do is just move very quickly to a presentation where I want to share with you my principles of the things that I've learned that hopefully will help and inspire you with your own leadership journey. You can still relate this to finance. You can still relate this to your projects, to your employment goals for the future. But I want you to get into a personal mindset and a much more focused view on who you are and what you're about. So let me share my screen and let's get started. Okay. If I just go to here, fantastic, brilliant. So unleashing your entrepreneurial power. This isn't about Dragon's Den. This isn't about, The Apprentice. This is about understanding no matter who you are, no matter where you've come from, no matter where you're going, you have entrepreneurial power. And what I mean by entrepreneurial power is the fact that you've had to overcome so many challenges in your life just to be here today. And I can say that categorically, and I don't even know you, but I know that you've gone through things in order to achieve just to get where you are today. Whether it be exams in school, whether it be life experiences, whether it just be your own personal development, you have such entrepreneurial power. And it's that power as a young person that you can take into any area of your future self. So what I want to do is share some views with you on how you can do that. I'll start by telling you a little bit about myself. I grew up in inner city Birmingham, working class background with all the trimmings of that, and I was, I suppose, destined not to achieve or succeed in any shape or form. And there were many times in my life where I accepted that because that's all I saw around me. So this picture on the screen is actually the area that I grew up in. So I lived in one of these flats here. So for me, I've lived that experience. I know what it's like to feel like you can't achieve. And because of your area or because of your difference, you start to succumb to that because everybody else is feeling that way. But there comes a point as an individual where you have to look at yourself in the mirror and really understand who you are. And no, I didn't want to be Barack Obama when I was younger. Didn't even know who he was. But what I did know is that I knew I was worth more. There was a point where I realized I knew I was worth more, but I didn't have any direction. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know how to get there. But I knew that where I am and where I've been wasn't where I wanted to stay. And that's really important as a young person in this day and age. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? And are you committed to taking the action to get there? I think you are, because you're listening to this webinar, you're involved in Invest, you're a great person, you're looking to achieve. So I'm challenging you, but I'm challenging you in a positive sense because I know you are. And so for me, after 30 years of work, I've achieved many, many great things, and I won't go through all of it on the slide. But for me, I've been able to really take my own journey and be able to turn it into some positive things, as well as a lot of negative things that I've also learned from too. But, you know, one of the biggest fears I had was heights. Did a skydive 2 years ago, you know, so really had the opportunity to add some real significant value, won awards, advised people in government, and had the pleasure of meeting the royal family in terms of my OBE award. So, you know, great things can happen when you really focus on who you are, what you're about, the value you want to provide. But we're talking about personal leadership here, and I want you to understand that it's an ever-growing journey. So just because you get to a particular level doesn't mean you've made it. There's always something else you could do. So as a young person, never get complacent. You have the ability to achieve whatever you want, but do not get complacent. Keep pushing, keep striving, keep setting them goals. And I'm going to show you how to do so. So number one, it's about having a very clear vision, but a very clear and clarified vision. So for example, if I was to ask you what you wanted to be in 10 years' time, what would you say? Would you say you wanted to be a surveyor? Would you want to be a head of a construction firm? That's wonderful. But I'd also ask you, what type of construction area would you want to go into? What type of surveyor and what type of element? You know, get into the detail of what you want to achieve is important, because it gives you that motivation and that inspiration to keep going when you're challenged along the way. And life will do that for you. It will challenge you along the way, but it's important that you have a very clarified vision. So that's my first point. Second, separate your what versus your why. So what I mean by that is, your why is the purpose. So why do you want to be successful? Why do you want to achieve? Why is it important to you? What's the purpose? The what is the how. So the what is, it's okay, so I need to study for this, or I need to learn that, or I need to go and get that type of job role because then I'll get the skills to do this. The what is the operations, the why is the purpose. So make sure you're very clear about the two things for you as an individual. So that's my second thing. My third thing is to face your fear. Often we get fearful of something because we haven't experienced it, or we have a perception of what it's going to make us feel like, or the impact it's going to create on us. But fear is a psychological state of mind. And my tip with fear is that if there's something that you're fearful about, think about a strategy that you would put in place if that fear was to become realized. Therefore, there is nothing else to fear. Do you get what I mean? If you've got a strategy in place, then what are you scared of? Because you know if that happens, you know what you'll do. So don't let fear become the thing that stops you. In fact, use fear as leverage. Use the adrenaline and the drive that fear gives you with a strategy in place to smash through any barrier that you have. That's the key to handling fear. Number 4 is mind your language. Now, I don't mean how you speak to other people. I mean how you speak to yourself. That's very, very important. I remember there were times when I'd say things like, oh, that was stupid. I'm stupid. I'm thick. Why did I do that? I'm so this, I'm so that. And then I realized that I was getting the results of those thoughts too. So once I started thinking about, well, you know what? I didn't get it right, but look what I learned. Great, look at that. I learned that. That means I can now do this. You know what? It's okay. I'm better than that. And once you start saying those things, you start to get different results. So be mindful of the language that you use against yourself, because it often turns out into your reality. But if you speak good things in the beginning, you'll get good things in the end. So don't worry about whether or not you'll achieve that job. You will if you tell yourself you will. Don't worry about not getting that funding for your project, because you will if you tell yourself you will. You don't have to know the answers yet, but you will know the answers in time. So my first reflection point is, what does success look like to you? What's the #1 barrier to your success right now? And why is this barrier so important? Is it something that you really need to focus on as a barrier, or is it something that you could easily get over? So I'm not asking you to answer those questions now, but I want you to reflect on those questions maybe after this call or in a later date. So moving on. Beware of frenemies. So a definition of a frenemy is someone who you've brought into your inner circle, someone that you trust, who could be the very person that could stop you moving forward. Often we're challenged by people who are often like us, or love us, or know us enough to have that personal connection with us. It's easy to see someone who's outside of that level of relationship, but often we are challenged by people that are inside of that. So be aware of the people that could hold you back, even those who are most closest to you. So your friends that you're hanging around with, are they the right friends for you? Are they really helping you to move forward? Are they holding you back? What conversations do you need to have? What relationships do you need to change in order to move forward and be successful? Don't be afraid to burn bridges, but bridges could also mean your habits, disciplines, things that you need to stop that are not going to help you move forward. So bear that in mind. What are the things that you need to stop doing now in order to move ahead for the future? Be adaptable to change is my next principle. Charles Darwin made a great quote here. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It's the one that's most adaptable to change. The only thing constant in life is change. But as young people, you have that entrepreneurial power, and dare I say, you have the time on your side to be able to respond to change much faster than older people like us with more experience. So think about how you could be adaptable and flexible to change in your own life to achieve the success that you want for the future. Understand your brand is my next principle. So what I mean by that is, if you was to walk out of the room, what are the top 3 things people might say about you when you're not there? That's what your brand is. It's how people perceive you. It's the emotion they connect with when they see you and when they engage with you. To follow on from that, Seth Godin, a wonderful marketeer and brand expert, talked about this when he says it's the prediction of what to expect times the emotional power of that expectation. He carries on, if I encounter a brand and I don't know what it means or does, it has 0 power. So what that means is people have an expectation of you based on their perception of you. And there's an emotional connection with that. But if when they connect with you, they don't get that feeling, it has 0 power. So when you're talking to future employers or you're talking to people who you can help you to move forward, what are the things that you want to leave them with? What are the things that you want them to take on board that can inspire them to continue to help you? So reflection point, what makes you think that you are really ready to succeed? How do you validate that? And where do you need to improve? So what makes you think you're ready to succeed? I'm not saying you're not, but what makes you believe that you are now ready to succeed? And how are you validating that? So what have you done in the past that you can look back and say, you know what? Wow, I did that. I did that. Or if you didn't do it, it's like, well, I went through that experience, but look what I've learned. And then where do you need to improve? So what can you do to improve to get to the next level? How can you build on that knowledge to move to the next level? So again, a reflection point. What makes you think you're ready to succeed? How do you validate that? Where do you need to improve? So as we move to the final slides now, be aware of the crowd and be aware of the noise. So in this world of digital technology, social media, a lot of noise, it's easy to follow what everybody else is saying. It's easy to follow the noise, but you have to remain authentically true to yourself so that even when you hear the noise, you can still make a decision on whether that noise is for you. You don't have to follow everything that everyone else is doing. You are you. You're unique. There's no one else like you on this earth. So why do you want to follow everybody else just for the sake of it? So be aware of the noise and your connection with that. Thanks for the questions coming through. I will get to them very, very shortly. Take risks. Life is not about standing still. Take risks, but using your entrepreneurial power, take calculated risks. So don't just do something because you think that's just the thing you want to do. Have you really analyzed the risk, the output, the outcome? Once you've done all of that, then you can make a much more informed decision of when you're going to jump. So take calculated risks. That's my next principle there. If it's important to you, you'll find a way. If not, you'll find an excuse. This is about understanding that if it's really, really important and it resonates in here, there's no excuse to be made. Make it happen. If it's not important to you, it's easy to find excuses. Don't find excuses. There's no time for that. You don't have time for that. You have time to be the best that you can be. To do that, it has to be important. So make sure you're motivated and emotionally connected to what you want. Otherwise, it's easy to say, oh, I can't be bothered, I'll give up. It's his fault, it's her fault, it's the dog's fault, it's the cat's fault, it's mum's fault, it's the government's fault. Where's your responsibility in your own success? And are you taking that on board? That's the challenge there. Take the first step. No one's saying you have to eat an elephant all at once. No one's saying you have to jump from A to Z. Start from A to B, but take the first step. So it might be send that email, make that call, have that conversation, read that book, read that blog. What's the first step that you need to take that's going to bring you closer to your journey? Because once you take the first step, you'll be more empowered to take the second and the third and the 10th and the 100th, and you'll get to where you want to get to. So take the first step, focus on that, do that first. Final reflection, where are you leading yourself or others? Who's holding you accountable for the outcome that you want to achieve? And what's the next action or the next step that you're going to take? What are you going to do today in order to make sure you achieve your goals tomorrow? What are you going to do today? Doesn't matter how big, doesn't matter how small. What are you going to do today? That's my challenge to you. Because success is not this big, glamorous, massive, fantastic champagne moment. But you will have many of those moments if you understand what it takes to be successful. Because the most successful realize that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. It's about everything that you learn along the way, about yourself, about people, about the world of work, about business, about community, about social impact. It's about everything that you learn along the way. So when you get that success, you can look back and be like, yeah, not only do you deserve it, not only can you pat yourself on the back for it, but you appreciate it more, because it's not about the egotistical side of being successful. It's about appreciating what it takes to be successful. That's the key. So I thank you very much for your time today. I am going to just look at these questions very quickly.
There's lots of comments in there. I've got some questions that have come through on email for you, actually, Joel. I'm going to start with one of my own. You mentioned earlier in your presentation about where you grew up, and you sort of alluded to the circumstances that go with that. And obviously the theme here is about the built environment and social justice, social sustainability.
Yeah.
How important do you think that was for you and what did you do to challenge some of those preconceptions for yourself and for others?
Yeah, great question, Catherine. The built environment was key, because when you're in that environment where everyone's thinking the same, there's the same mindset, and that mindset is not always positive. And then when you look around, all you're seeing is high-rise flats, and you've got 20 floors. You know, it's a bit like the projects in the US. You know, it's our own projects over here. So there's a sense of depression when you're going into your own flat. You've got noise above you, you've got noise to the left of you, noise to the right of you, noise below you. All you can see is that same state of depression almost. It gives you two choices. You can either succumb to that and think that's all life is about, or you can learn the lessons that those types of environments teach you in order to seek a difference. And for me, books was my get out. I'm an avid reader, so I would read about things that I was interested in that I probably didn't have the experience of, but I could see, and it helps me to envision what I could do based on where I was, which then helped me to understand how I need to change myself and my relationships and how I am with people in order to learn how I can then connect with people outside of that environment in order to achieve the things that I wanted to achieve. So the built environment can really break you or it can make you. But it's really about you as the individual, understanding the lessons that you're learning and deciding what you want those lessons to really mean for you in your life. So that's how I looked at it, Catherine, to be honest with you.
Brilliant, thank you. I've got a question here which probably leads into that, from one of the careers leads asking about, you obviously sort of embraced learning and you read a lot, and you even in your presentation there you've shared lots of links. What would be a way, do you think, that this person or all of the careers leads on this call could encourage young people to feel the same way about learning more than just what's on the curriculum?
I think it's about asking the young people what education means to them in the broadest sense of the word, because there's academic education, but there's life education. So I think it's about having those conversations with those young people to ask them, what are they learning from life? and it's having those authentic discussions and dialogue about those things, then it's about understanding what resources that they're using to learn more about life. So are they watching different types of videos than what careers advisors might offer, for example? Or, you know, even as the careers advisor, how are you broadening your education to add even greater value back to your young people? So it's about breaking those comfort zones a little bit, but through authentic dialogue and understanding that education means many different things to many different people, but it's about having that dialogue to understand that and working together in an inclusive manner in order to achieve that understanding and learning for the future.
I know that where you are at the moment is around finance and investment and looking at some of those things. What kind of trends do you see in the kind of information that people are looking for, particularly, I guess, with a leaning to sustainability, if that's something that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think there's a definite leaning towards, you know, on a global scale, the more kind of ESG goals, environment, social goals in that context. Many more financiers are wanting to see more than just social impact. A major trend, most definitely, is in that kind of social value piece and being able to evidence that, being able to really talk about how this injection of finance is going to add multiple value, not just commercial return. And the evidence base for that, I think that's really, really key. I think within construction, certainly in terms of the impact of the built environment, property on the health and the contribution to the communities where those properties or that environment is being built up in, and how you're making sure that you're adding longer term sustainable value to the communities that you're affecting through that built environment. That is a very interesting area. And then that lends more again into that kind of life sciences, healthcare, social justice arena, really looking at how we're really using the physical environment to solve really tangible socially driven impacts for the future. There's a real overarching trend for that. I mean, just I think a couple of months ago, I came across a business called Ticker, which is a technology company where it was founded by two guys who were from the investment banking space. But what they've done is they've created an app that helps organizations do more impact investing. So investors who want to invest specifically around social and global change, they've created a technology for that. They've raised, you know, hundreds of thousands of pounds of investment. In fact, to tell a lie, they've just raised a couple of million on top of that as well, because of that social impact of what they're doing. So, you know, that's just a quick example that comes to mind of the importance of investing for social value.
And I think the changes, it's been slow coming, but it's starting to take place. When the festival was opened, for anyone who missed Monday here, the festival was opened by the Right Honourable Justine Greening and Seema Kennedy OBE. And one of the things that Seema was talking about was the fact that back in the 1930s, in that sort of interwar period, the Minister for Housing was also the Minister for Health, because it was seen as so interrelated. And it's something I hope maybe we start to get back to
Absolutely.
Seeing the connection.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, as we move forward as a community and as a country and on a global basis, you know, certainly with my presidency of the Commonwealth Chamber hat on separately, what I am seeing is a real desire to connect on a global scale, right across the Commonwealth, in that aspect, because people now see that change can be really accelerated in many different ways, and government and policy is starting to align with that more than ever before. So I think the next 5 to 10 years are going to see a real revolution and a real change. And in fact, interesting enough, that, you know, I've got to jump off shortly because I'm involved in a conversation just on that very thing. It's about how do we get countries to be a bit more aligned on the back of the Commonwealth Games, part of the legacy for the region, and indeed how that manifests itself on a global scale in terms of the narrative for the region. So exciting times ahead, and I think what the Festival of Construction is doing and what BESS is doing is absolutely fantastic, particularly when I think about on a global scale where, particularly across the Commonwealth, I think it's about 60% of the demographics are under 30, right across all 53 Commonwealth or 54 Commonwealth countries. So it's initiatives like this that are investing in the future workforces right across the world. I think that's the key to success, and policy must always align with that. And I think we're getting there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, Joel. I've shared a link to your TED Talk, and if you're happy, I'd love to put your slides up on the Best Connect, because I know a lot of teachers and careers leads are over there, and there were some really useful questions and prompts and things in there that would be great. Thank you for joining us, Joel. Please, audience, join me in saying a massive thank you to Joel. And now we are moving on to the next part of the day. Thanks, Joel.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks again for inviting me. And I wish all the young people the best of luck with their future. And I look forward to speaking to you all soon.